Hi everybody. So for today, in social studies, we're on page 146 and 147. So picking up from where we left off on Monday, um, this chapter is about how we became a country. It's about how we broke away from England and the King of England, and why we decided to do that. Okay. There was French and Indian War, or as it was called, really a war between Britain and France for territory in the United States. Um, and Native Americans fought on both sides. Okay. Um, so Great Britain war costs money. Ammunition, clothes for soldiers, it all costs money. So now they're in debt. Britain's in debt, even though it won the war. It still spent a lot of money. So they decide to tax the colonists in the 13 colonies. Okay, the king has the authority to do that. The colonists don't like this though because they have no say in their government. So if you remember, no taxation without representation slogan or saying, um, and we did the cause and effect flow chart. Great Britain is in debt because of the French and Indian War, so Britain needed to raise money, and then they taxed the colonists. But the colonists protest no taxation without representation. And just a reminder, that just means that they don't want to be taxed when they don't have a say in what they're allowed to do and not do. They're not allowed to vote. They don't vote for their government. It's just the king tells them what to do. And if they don't like it, too bad. Our government isn't like that, and we built it on purpose not to be like that, because we didn't like the way the king was treating us at the time. Um, so nowadays, yes, we do pay taxes, but we have more of a say in our government. We vote for our senators and our governors, the people that run our states, and then we vote for our president, okay, and people in the federal government in Washington, D.C. Okay, so picking up from there, we're going to read about what the colonists do, how they respond to all these taxes that they think they're being unfairly put on them. Okay, so I'm going to start reading on page 146. It says the colonists take action. Patrick Henry was a young lawyer from Virginia. He opposed the Stamp Act. Remember, this is when everyone had to put stamps on things that they were letters, newspapers, pretty much everything that you wrote on. So he gave a powerful speech to Virginia's lawmakers. Parliament had no right to tax the colonists, he argued. Other leaders agreed with Henry. In October of 1765, representatives from 9 colonies met in New York City. They included lawyers, farmers, and business people. The meeting they held was called the Stamp Act Congress. A Congress is a formal meeting. It could also be a lawmaking body. That's what our modern day Congress is, why it's called a Congress, because they make laws. They're the ones who make the laws. The Congress asked Parliament to repeal, which is another word for cancel, the Stamp Act. Individual colonists also opposed the Stamp Act. A group in Boston called the Sons of Liberty organized protests. Other groups formed throughout the colonies, taking actions that frightened the people that sold the stamps, called the stamp agents. These people burned stamps, threatened stamp agents, and sometimes attacked the agents' homes. In Boston, protesters created an effigy, or a life-size puppet of a local stamp agent, and hung it from a tree. Soon no one was willing to sell the stamps because they were worried about their own safety, okay? So if you see in this picture down here, political cartoon, they have a puppet, and it's like they're almost like they're hanging it from a tree. So people were scared for their lives, the people that sold the stamps, okay? In addition, some merchants, people who buy and sell goods for profit, decided to boycott British goods. Boycotts take place when people get together and refuse to use or buy something. The colonists' goal was to hurt British trade. By 1766, their actions worked. Parliament repealed the Stamp Act. Okay, so number 3 says this image shows protesters carrying an effigy of stamp agent. Label the effigy with the protesters, then write why the colonists are protesting. Okay, so they're saying they want you to, what would this puppet say? If it's his job to collect taxes, okay? So we could just say, I am here, let's just put, I'm here to collect your taxes, okay? Let's keep it simple. I'm here to collect taxes. This is almost like a comic strip, okay? So for the puppet, let's just put, I'm here to collect taxes, okay? What do you think the people are saying? Okay, they're complaining, they're boycotting taxes, okay? So let's put no taxation without representation. That was the saying. Without representation. Could barely fit it in there. Okay, so no taxation without representation. If you can't see that, you could go to the last page, okay? Page 145. It says no taxation without representation, okay? That was their saying. All right. Now it says, now write why the colonists are protesting. Okay, so they're protesting because they don't want to have to pay for stamps, right? So they are protesting the stamps being taxed. Let's say that stamps being taxed. Okay, means there's extra money they have to pay, so they are protesting stamps being taxed, meaning there's extra money they had to pay for stamps, okay? Rather than just the price of the stamp, there's additional money being put on it. That's what a tax is, and it goes to the government, okay? All right, let's go to page 147. Okay, so they took care of the Stamp Act, okay? They got it repealed or canceled. Now it says new taxes from Great Britain. Uh-oh, okay. Although Parliament had repealed the Stamp Act, Great Britain still needed money. King George III and Parliament also wanted the American colonists to understand that Great Britain had the right to tax them. In 1767, a British leader named Charles Townshend called for a new set of laws to control the colonies. They were called the Townshend Acts. These laws placed a tariff, which is the same thing as a tax, on many goods that the colonists imported from Britain. These goods included paper, wool, glass, paint, and lead. Tariffs are usually placed on goods to control trade between nations, but the only purpose of the taxes of the Townshend Acts was to make money for Great Britain. The colonists had to pay these taxes, but people living in Great Britain did not. So, if you lived in Great Britain, you didn't have to pay these taxes. It was only if you lived in America. Even though you're supposed to be a British citizen, because the colonies belong to Great Britain and the king, you had to pay the taxes. That sounds pretty unfair, right? So in response to the new tariffs, colonists boycotted many of the taxed items again. The boycotts were more widespread than they had been for the Stamp Act. In Boston, the Sons of Liberty organized protests. Leaders such as Samuel Adams, which we read about, and James Otis spoke out about colonists' rights. Okay, so for number 4, it says fill in the charts with details about the Townshend Acts. Okay, so what were the Townshend Acts? Okay, they were basically more taxes, okay? And they were named after this leader, Charles Townshend, because he's the one who thought that there should be more new laws to control the colonies. Okay, so what were the Townshend Acts? They were tax on many goods that came from Britain. That came from Britain. Okay, simple. There were tax for many on many goods that came from Britain. Okay, and then it fills in the other box for you. It says, why did Britain need a new tax? They needed a new tax to pay its debts from the French and Indian War. Okay, it said that in the reading. But also, remember, King George and Parliament, they said they also wanted to make the American colonists to understand that Great Britain had the right to tax them. So it was also a power thing. They wanted them to be obedient, almost like, you would want your pet to listen to you. Okay, might be a weird analogy, but the king wanted them to know that he had the authority. He was the boss. Okay. Who was against paying this tax? Okay, so most of the colonists were against paying the taxes, right? So we're going to put the colonists. That's it, the colonists, okay? The colonists were against paying the tax, okay? And what effect did the tax have in the colonies? Okay, so there was more boycotts, right? And protest. Okay, so I'm going to write down there were more boycotts and protests. Okay, what effect did the tax have in the colonies? There were more boycotts and protests. Okay, so people were speaking out more against these new taxes. Okay, so on Friday we'll find out what happens, how they do they resolve this, or what comes next. Okay, all right, thanks for watching, guys.